That was such an abrupt interruption. What is up, everyone? Hey, welcome to the completely free workshop on race conditions in web applications. I'm usually used to a 5 minute countdown, and Restream only gives me a 1 minute countdown. So now I'm trying to get everything done as we are live. But hello, everyone. If you guys can let me know, I'm going to make sure that we are live. Okay, I see a bunch of chat come in. Okay, beautiful. So we must be live in all three places. I see Twitch checking in, YouTube checking in. I'm going to double check that we are live on LinkedIn, but then we should be good to go. And I'll explain to you guys all what's going on. Sweet. I'm seated on LinkedIn. Beautiful. I did it. We are successful. We are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. So, hey, you can watch in whichever platform works best for you. I have the live chat from all three streams up here. It's not on the screen because I don't want to take up the screen, but I am monitoring it. I do see it. But welcome, everyone. This is going to be a completely free workshop on race conditions in web apps, and it's going to be led by my good friend, Tinus Green. I will let him introduce himself in just a moment, but I do want to let you guys know that this workshop is fully hands-on and completely free. So there is a lab environment to follow along with this workshop, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the link to that lab environment and drop it in the chat. So it should be in the chat now. Otherwise, I don't think Restream sends the messages to LinkedIn because LinkedIn and Restream don't like each other. But if you go out to hacksmarter.org, you will see it at the very top of the page, the free workshop on race conditions. You can join that. You'll be able to launch the labs and you'll be able to hack right alongside of us. Also, we want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions as we go, I will be monitoring chat and we'll do a little bit of Q&A. And one final announcement before I bring Tinus on, we're also doing giveaways to the Hack Smarter platform. So I will be explaining those giveaways later on in the stream. You have to be here during the live stream to be eligible because I will drop a Google form randomly towards the end of the stream, and then that's where you sign up, and then I will do the drawings offline. And hey, we just got a super chat from the Bearded IT Dad 1337 to kick things off. Thank you, Dakota. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and bring Tinus up on stage. Tinus, what is up, my friend?
Hi there, Tyler. Hi there, everyone. Nice being back after such a long while. It's been a while since we talked on stream or anything.
It has been, dude. We did like a whole AD series for a while. This was like years ago, but I remember you pulled out Cobalt Strike and we did like some insane rated Active Directory machine on Hack the Box, which was fun. So if anyone missed that, make sure you check it out. But Tinus, for those of you who don't know you, like, who is this dude all dressed up fancy, unlike me in my like dirty hoodie? Who are you?
So I literally just rushed home from work and like made it with the train and everything. So I'm from South Africa. I am at a cybersecurity firm called MWR, the head of consultancy there. It's been a while now in the cybersecurity industry. My predominant focus is offensive security. My old school speciality was application security. I still love it, still have passion in my heart for application security. But since then moved on to things like crisis management and those things there as well. And I like to create content and everything. I do some content creation for Try Hack Me. I work for a couple of universities to help their project students there as well. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun to do some knowledge sharing and share stuff out there with the community.
I love it. Well, dude, thank you for taking the opportunity to hang out. I was just trying to pull up the different streams. Everything does seem to be good. We have already like 100 people, so don't be nervous. But between YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch, we're at around 100 people. I'm sure that will go up. So thank you again, dude, for taking the opportunity to share with all of us. What we are going to do now, so the way we're going to do this is we have a short presentation where Tinus is going to teach us about race conditions. Then we have a hands-on lab that we're going to do a quick demo. And then we have a bunch of labs for you, like take-home homework that are completely free. So, Tinus, I'm going to go ahead and pull your screen up here. And let's make sure it actually works. There we go. And you know what? I wonder if I can just, I don't know if I can hide myself. I probably can, but I don't know how. So I'll just stay awkwardly in this corner as you teach. And as you go, I will keep my eye on the chat. So those of you in the live stream, if you have questions about something specific in the presentation, feel free to ask them. Tinus is good answering those. Otherwise, if it's like a general career question, we can maybe answer that later. But we'll be focused on race conditions. So all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Tinus Green.
Sounds good. Tyler, you can be there in the corner and translate in interpretive dance. Let's go for it for a workshop on race conditions. I'll preface this in saying that um, this isn't going to teach you the most expert and novel ways of looking at race conditions. A lot of this information is already available online. Basically, the reason for me presenting this is at our offices we started to realize after asking some questions that it's often hard to understand where to test for race conditions. And if you are in the offensive security scene, you would basically know that one of the things that's important is efficient testing. And efficient testing can only happen when you're not throwing everything and the kitchen sink at everything that you're testing, but rather intelligently looking at what you are seeing on a web application and using that to decide when to apply different types of methodologies there as well. And basically, after asking a couple of people inside the organization, some of our consultants, also trying to make a joke about race conditions and people not getting the joke, I realized maybe it is the joke itself was a race condition. So I was a little bit sad. So here we go. Here's a workshop to teach a little bit of things about race conditions. And I think where I want to start is just asking the question around what is a race condition really? And ultimately, if you have to summarize it, there is some sort of bug where the outcome of the program depends on, and the keyword there is unpredictable timing of multiple threads or processes. And the reason they are actually so prevalent in web applications is, practically speaking, a web application serves multiple different users at the same time. And it's important to note that, like, it's not me, Tinus, connecting to the web application and that blocks the entire web application for everyone. And then when Tyler wants to connect, he needs to wait for my connection to end there, right? It's a multi-threaded system that happens there. And the issue comes in when we're basically talking about a place where there's multiple threads that are trying to access shared data. And I think one of the things that you can see from this image is that we basically had person A and person B read the value of 17 from the bank almost at the same time. Both person A and person B in this case actually use the value of 17 in whatever logic the application was applying at that point. And then basically, both of them are writing back the exact same value there. So in that case, where it should have incremented to 19, unfortunately, with both of them reading the 17 at the same time, doing their values and writing it out, we get the value of 18 in this case as well. There's some really, really good resources on Portswigger to show it. This comes from the Portswigger website as well. But essentially, the idea behind it is that if we have two requests that are looking to apply a specific value, use a shared data, and in this case, the shared data is the variable that is storing whether or not we have applied the discount already. And normally what would happen is if request one comes in and it says that, hey, the discount has been applied. Tyler, can you shift us there to the top? I think it's going to be better for
Yeah, I just saw that. I
you.
wonder if I can just make us here. Give me just a moment. I'm gonna
Sure.
try to. What if here? Let me try this.
Here we go. Cool. Okay. I think that should be better for the rest of the presentation there as well. But as you can see in this case, right, we have a request that's coming in that's looking whether it's submitting a discount code, and it asks the question, there's some logic to determine, has the code already been used? And then if the code has not yet been used because it's saying false, it's going to apply the discount, and then it's going to set the code to be used. So when request number 2 comes in and we submit that same discount code, it goes code already used true, and it's basically going to reject request 2 in saying that that code has already been used, so it is invalid. What happens with a race condition, right, is from the point where it has submitted the discount code, right, where it reads whether or not the code has already been applied, to the point where it actually changes the state of whether the code has been applied already or not, is what we refer to as a race window. So essentially, if you have request one and request two that comes in so close to each other that at the same time it's reading code already used to be false, it's going to apply that discount twice. And at the point where it applies that discount twice, right, both requests are going to now set the code already used to true, but it doesn't really matter at this point, right? Because it's already applied a double discount in this case, and it's never again going to check whether the code has already been used. And for that reason, this is the race window that we are specifically talking about. And later on, that's a terminology that we will use as well when we talk about where are we trying to cause a race condition. We want to understand what our race window is looking like, because that's going to help you to better identify race conditions in the wild there as well. Now, it's worth us having a little bit of a chat about why are we seeing race conditions pop up a lot more in recent years, right? I personally think it's all to do with a certain person called James Kettle, and we'll dive into that later. But if you think about 10 years ago, right, web applications and systems were fairly simple, right? If you even think about like what did things like online banking look like, um, then like it was one web application, right? So like you have this one interface, it's slow, right? It loads data from like one single resource in the background, and then displays it. But fundamentally, we were dealing with systems that were really, really simple. I highlight here that 10 years ago we had a front end. But it's worth noting, I don't even think 10 years ago we really separated front end and like back ends that much, right? We were dealing with like a web application that has all the JavaScript already embedded in it, that old school style of development there. And essentially, the thing that happened there is we were dealing with less complex systems and you had less teams working on projects. And that's also important because as soon as you have more people working on a project, it's harder to assign ownership and accountability. Team A can think that the security controls that are being implemented is the responsibility from Team B, and Team B thinks that Team A is going to do it. And in the end, no one basically implements that security. And what has happened is in today's time, systems look a little bit like this, right? Where there's so much going on, right? It's not just about the web application, it's everything around it as well. We have load balancers. We don't just have one front end, right? But we have like multiple Kubernetes pods that are like scaling up and scaling down, depending on the usage of the application, right? And then it's not just talking to this application to a single database, but to like multiple downstream systems. And we also have application A that is integrated with application B. And it gets even worse when like application B is a third party system. So in those cases, right, things have become incredibly complex, right? And the reason that it has like with this becoming so complex, right? If you think about it, there are several different locations where issues and potentially race conditions can come in. So at this point, right, where are we sort of keeping tabs on our static data, on our shared data, and making sure that we don't have two users, two processes, and two systems that are trying to access that data or that resource at exactly the same time. And whose responsibility is it, right? Even this diagram here seems quite simple by showing like one ecosystem, but what does this look like when what does this fundamentally look like when you're talking about various different organizations having cross communication? If you think, for example, and this is some of the examples you'll see in the workshop today, if you look at, for example, one of the popular things that we have in South Africa and the African regions is making use of things called mobile wallets or mobile money, where the idea is that you're doing a large amount of your financial transactions on your phone, actually directly through things like USSD codes. And you have the ability to go to online banks and transfer your money from the online bank into what's called a mobile wallet, and then transact using things like USSD codes, which is quite a popular thing to do. And that's such a complex integrated environment, right? Because you have a bank that needs to transfer money to a mobile network operator, or basically make the promise that money will be transferred there. And then the mobile network operator needs to then transfer that money into your mobile wallet account. And at that point, um, who takes responsibility for what from a security perspective? And because these systems have gotten so complex, um, race conditions can actually exist in a lot of the different requests that are being made here as well. Now, this is the one thing that has happened, but there has been something else, and this is where I have to give credit where credit is due, with someone like James Kettle, right? Is that what has changed here as well is that now we have the ability to ignore something that was largely the reason why it was so hard to exploit race conditions. The thing is, even if we have that race window, right? And later on, I'll show you how large that race window is, but even if we have that race window, for you to line up request one and request two in such a manner that your race window would actually line up was incredibly hard. And it was hard because it's useful to think about what happens between the time that you make a request, right, and that request reaching the web server. It's not like you're sitting directly next to the same web server, right? And for someone like me that lives in South Africa, for a lot of our international resources, it's an even longer journey that happens there. And what's interesting to notice there is when you're starting to talk about like the protocols that's used for the internet, such as BGP, which tries to like optimize routes that packets are taking there, it is incredibly hard for you to send two requests and have them hit the web server at the same time. And that is almost a requirement given the size of these race windows, that your requests have to hit the web server at the same time, right? And then you have the ability to exploit that race window that is there. So what you'll notice here is that with these two requests, we have a decent amount of jitter in our network latency, which is what's preventing us from reaching that race window. And what James Kettle and the researchers have shown there is that we now have the ability to basically eliminate network latency and James Kettle from the race window, which allows us to really do a lot of work in lining up our race windows and exploiting them there as well. So what happened? Well, James Kettle, and I highly recommend you read the full research paper behind it as well. There's a lot of technical stuff in there, and I'm going to try and simplify some of the technical stuff. It's worth noting that really make sure that you dive into the technical pieces of this as well, and not just for something like burp, do the point and click things. It's really awesome to see what race conditions and what has been created here, to see what this looks like from a Wireshark perspective there as well. Now, we're going to show what race conditions look like from a HTTP 1 and a HTTP 2 perspective as well. For HTTP 1, it's basically running an attack that we call a last byte sync attack. And the simplest thing, or the simplest way to think about this is, when you are sending a web request, you are sending quite a number of bytes of data, often in the range of kilobytes of data that you are sending through. If you're uploading files, we're talking bigger as well. But like even normal requests are sending a decent amount of bytes over the network. And because you're sending so many different bytes, right, it is hard for you to align those various different requests. But fundamentally, what last byte sync is doing is it's exploiting the fact that the web server will not start processing the request until it has received the complete request, right? And if you take a look deeper into the technicals behind it, remember that for web requests, you have control characters, right? So your web request is basically going to end when the content length has basically been matched, right? You specify content length to say how much data is coming in this specific request. And of course, if you're telling it that, hey, 40 bytes of data is going to follow, and you only send 39 bytes of data, it will be.
Hey, I think we lost Tinus, but he's back. Tinus, I think your internet just like bugged out for a second, but I see you back in here. So I'm going to pull you back up on the stage. I think we're good. It was only like a split second that you disappeared here. Here's Tinus, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if I can get him pulled back up.
Thanks, Tyler. Was
All right.
it? Where did you lose me? Was I literally at that last second there?
Yeah, you literally went away for just a second. Let me get all of your stuff pulled back up, and I'm gonna make myself disappear. All right, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tyler. Sorry for the South African internet here. It's part of the game. Okay, so as I was explaining there, if you have a content length that is saying you have 40 bytes of data that is coming to follow, and you only send 39 bytes, that web server is basically going to wait until it receives that last byte of data before it starts to process the request. So the idea behind last byte sync is that we take, right, the 20 to 30 different requests that we would like to send and test for a race condition. We send all 20 to 30 of those requests, right, except for the last byte of every single request. And then basically at the last request that we are making, right, or at the last packet that we send all of those bytes of the last bytes of each of the requests. We send all of that together in a single TCP packet, which means that once that TCP packet hits the web server, all of those requests are receiving their last byte. And because all of them are receiving their last byte, all of those requests are going to start to process on the server side. And now you have effectively eliminated network latency. You've eliminated network latency from testing for a race condition. And now, even the tiniest of race conditions on the web server side, you have the ability to detect and to play around with. So one of the things that's super, super cool to see, and I highly recommend when you do the practical of the workshop, go play around with this, is you'll see that I basically have 4 different requests that I am going to send with burp in parallel, right? And I'm going to use the last byte sync attack. And what is very interesting to do is open Wireshark when you do this, right? And capture the Wireshark traffic. And what you'll notice here is take a look that for each of these requests, they were basically 409 bytes of data that we had to send for every single one of these requests. But take a look at what frame our data is in. So you can see that for the first request, the first 408 bytes was in frame 181, right? And then we had the next 408 bytes, or previously, even earlier, we had 100 in frame 176. And then we had another 408 in 186 as our frame, and 191. So you can see that there's quite a large frame discrepancy between the bytes that we have sent there. But we know that those requests won't yet actually be processed by the web server. And have a look at how close our bytes are being sent together in our frames for that last byte that we send for every single request, which is going to allow for the race condition or us to potentially exploit that race condition. You can see this 1 byte is at frame 195, 197, 199, 201. So it's in rapid succession. And these are tiny requests that I've made here. If you make larger requests, then you're going to see that the discrepancy between the initial bytes being sent and that last byte is even larger. But what you do know is that those last bytes are going to be sent in rapid succession, hopefully in a single TCP packet, which is basically going to ensure that all of them get processed at exactly the same time. Now, when we touch on this, it's worth sort of asking a question of how big of a race window are we practically talking about? So here's a little bit of a code sample. Please don't shout at me too much for my Python coding. It's my personal style of coding, and I don't develop production applications. So I think it's also okay. But if you take a look at the code that we have here that's doing authentication for a user, this code is vulnerable to a race condition. Now, I'll basically sort of talk a little bit more to give people that want to sort of explore this for themselves that they can take a look at it, right? Um, but the gist of it is that our race window is starting here and our race window is ending here. And let me explain what is the race condition that we have here in our code. Now, this is really bad code, so please don't use this in production. But what I am doing is to verify the users. I am basically pulling their username or basically pulling the password associated with their username. I'm then getting all of those results. And then basically what I'm doing is if there is a result, so if I have a username match, then what I am going to do is I'm basically going to try and compare their password to their password hash. And if those two checks out there, and again, passwords aren't being hashed or salted or anything like that here, if it is, then we'll log them in. But if the password is incorrect, right, what we are going to do is we're going to add an extra logon attempt as well. So what is essentially happening here is we have this variable called logon attempts. And at the point, right, where your logon attempts reaches 5 with this adding a logon attempt, right? Where it reaches 5, at that point, it physically locks out your profile forever regardless of whether the password is correct or not. If your logon attempts reaches more than 5, this web application is not going to allow you to authenticate anymore. This is also a hint for the second race condition that you will exploit if you do the practical tasks of the workshop, for the simple reason that like it's one shot. If you get it wrong, you're going to have to reset your entire VM. So like maybe test with some other accounts first, make sure that you're comfortable, and then try to actually get the flag associated with that question there. But what's happening here, right, is at the point where it gets your amount of logon attempts to the point where if the password was wrong, it increases your logon attempts. We have a race condition, right? Well, this is trying to say, hey, if you get the password wrong more than 5 times or equal to 5 times, you're no longer allowed to authenticate. We can look to basically store brute force accounts by exploiting this race condition. Rather than only trying for 5 passwords, what we can look to do is using something like last byte sync, we can essentially send it 50 requests with 50 different passwords and send it with last byte sync, which means that all of them are basically going to read from logon attempts, read like, oh, my logon attempts is currently at 0, and allow it to try and perform the authentication there. Now, of course, this is a one-shot race condition. If you get it wrong with those 50 attempts that you have guessed, of course, there's a good opportunity that out of those 50 requests, enough of them are going to increase the logon attempts so that it's more than 5 and you're out of it. But it begs the question, if you look at this code, how large is the race condition that we are talking about? So from the point of this line in code to this line in code on a stock standard 2 CPU machine, what are we dealing with there? Then basically we're dealing with 60 milliseconds. So we're talking about 60 milliseconds that is passing from where the race condition starts or the race window starts to where it ends. Now, for someone like me in South Africa, I mean, I'm running a persistent ping to see if my line is active. My ping is running around 5 to 10 milliseconds right now, which I think is a decent ping. But it goes to show you, if we just go back to this, why our network latency and the jitter around this was something that prevents us quite largely from exploiting these race conditions. If you eliminate that network latency entirely, you have a complete 60 seconds in which you can exploit this particular race condition. James Kettle does some very, very insane stuff. I'm talking under correction, but in one of his Black Hat talks, I think he says that the smallest race condition that he has heard of is in the nanosecond range, which is that's incredibly, incredibly tiny, right? But it seems to be possible when we eliminate that network latency or make it as small as possible from the entire exploit that we are doing here. Now, in the HTTP2, race conditions exist as well. Um, Here, what James Kettle has designed is basically what is called a single packet attack. I am still working through the technical details of it. I'm not an expert on Nagel's algorithm or how it works, but in essence, it's using a big part of the same foundation as what you saw with version 1 of HTTP with last byte sync, where what's happening is that we're making a couple of decisions whether or not a request has a body. Um, but what we then do is we will then essentially again withhold some of the data, as small amount of the data as possible, right? We then wait for all those initial frames to be sent. And then once it has happened, we send the withheld fragments. And again, all it's basically doing is completing those 20 to 30 requests with a single TCP packet, which basically means that, again, we are minimizing our network latency, and that allows us to test it there. With this one, so what was interesting as I was preparing this workshop to give it in Jan, I started getting into the hobby of 3D printing. And I actually found a race condition on a 3D printing website. I'm not going to show the name. Well, the name will get shown. They have fixed it already. I reported it to them. They fixed it. But the gist of it was that we had this 3D printing website where you had a set amount of tokens to unlock a set amount of designs on the web application. And basically, what happened here is that I saw that, hey, I have 9 tokens. I wonder if it's going to force me to only unlock 9 designs, or whether I can actually exploit the race condition here. So what you will see is this is in Burp, where what I'm doing is I'm basically changing the design ID for the token use request, which is the request that we are going to fire to basically unlock different designs for ourselves. What you'll notice there at the top is that I only had 9 tokens, but I'm running 15 different designs for unlock. What's very, very interesting to see here is that you'll see that for several of the requests that were made, the new balance shows a 5, right? And that's quite interesting to see. And there you can see it showing a 7 and then a 5. So what's very interesting to see here is that I went like, okay, I made 15 unlock requests, and with 15 unlock requests, what happened was it only used 3 of my tokens. So it means that the race window basically allows me to use the same token for 5 different unlocks there as well. I reported it to them and they immediately fixed it there as well. But what was interesting is you'll notice I only have 15 tokens per month. And if you take a look at the, it still says that I have 5 tokens left. But if we take a look at the unlocked, I think it was something like 20 various different designs that were already unlocked there as well. So that was a fun thing as I was busy as I was getting prepped for the race condition website. It just basically popped out to me that it's something to test there as well. Now that leads me to the last part that I want to end off on before I show a little bit of the practical and what you can do on core stack there as well. But basically, how do you know that you need to test for a race condition? So what is the signal you need to look for to tell you that there is a race condition? James Kettle wrote a really, really good article on the methodology for finding race conditions. And there's some incredible stuff that he does where he's lining up various different race windows by like padding additional requests and everything. It's worth giving that a read. It's really worth sort of working through that. But for now, I want to simplify that to just get you started. And I think For me, the signal behind why you should be testing for a race condition is that the web application is setting a arbitrary limit. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think back at our login example, there was an arbitrary limit that if you have more than 5 incorrect password attempts, you are locked out. That's an arbitrary limit that is being set by the application. If you look at the discount applied example, there's an arbitrary limit that you're only allowed to have a single discount applied at any good time. And I think that's what I need you to think about practically when you are performing testing, whether that's on a CTF, whether that's on actual assessments. But think about, is the web application, right? Is that web application placing a limit on me? And that can be in a wide form of things. On financial applications, right? Are you allowed to have a negative balance? Because if not, right, then that's an arbitrary limit. Does an application only allow one of a thing or two of a thing? Or when you reach a certain cap, it says like a cap has been reached, right? All of those different things are arbitrary limits that are being set for you there. And when you discover a arbitrary limit, that should be the prompting or the signal that you get that you need to test for a race condition. Um, Through what I have in a workshop and what I created for everyone to do is that in this workshop on Core Stack, there is basically 5 different race conditions for you to exploit. For the rest of the demonstration, I am going to run through the first one just as a live demo here as well. But basically, this virtual machine that I've created there is hosting 3 different applications for you. The Core Stack Lab has a lot of information to tell you the different ones. We have a banking application, so MWR Bank. Then we have our mobile wallet or mobile money application called MWR Momo. And then we have a swag website, so a website where we can buy swag called MWR Swag. And these 3 web applications are talking to each other in different ways. From MWR Bank, you can transfer money into your mobile wallet, and then from your mobile wallet, you can basically pay for stuff on the Swag website there. So there's interaction happening between these different websites in different ways. And through doing this practical course, I hope that you get a feel for the various different race conditions that is there. It starts very simple with some transactions that I'll show you, then the authentication one that I'll let everyone know. But then stuff starts to get interesting where we're no longer just talking about a race condition happening on a single system, but we're talking about race conditions happening because 2 different systems need to talk to each other. When you talk about race conditions in a single system, a lot of that's within your control, right? You can make that transaction that is happening or that data read, you can make that atomic, right? That means that you can basically go and you can say, hey, on my single system, when a user accesses the is the discount has been applied, right, value, make sure no other process can access that value while this transaction or this process is taking place. And then once we're done with the process, we can unlock it again, right? And other processes can read it. Perfect. That works phenomenally well when you're dealing with one web application. But what if you have 2 systems talking to each other? If you have bank transferring money to a mobile wallet, who in that case is actually taking responsibility for keeping the true ledger, right? What is preventing you from potentially exploiting a race condition on MWR Bank so that it only deducts a set amount of money from your account, but MWR Bank on its behalf is making multiple requests to transfer money to a mobile wallet in that case, which basically means you end up with more mobile money than what you should in that specific thing. And that's a very interesting thing because I think that the financial sector is going to optimize for making sure that you don't lose your money. Imagine how many people will like go on a run of the bank if they transfer money to a mobile wallet and the bank just goes, we're so sorry, the money's gone, right? So the bank has to take like that responsibility that the money physically hits that mobile wallet. So they are risk adverse to you losing the money, which might mean that there's a larger opportunity for a race condition there. And then if you complete all 4 of these various different race conditions, my favorite is number 4, because it's such a mind-boggling thing to think about. But if you finish all 4 of them, you get a flag for each of these. Those 4 flags combine together to give you SSH access to the host, where you can exploit a really lovely time of check, time of use, local privilege escalation. It's a very simple one, but I do think that it is a phenomenally good one for you to exploit there. So with that being said, on CoreStack, you'll see that you have the ability to start the race condition when you're, Tyler, do I need to
Real
stop
quick.
you first?
Yeah, just pause here just for a moment. I'll introduce here. You keep sharing your screen. I'm just gonna take it off the screen for a moment. So, terms. CoreStack is the back end, but you guys will want to go to Hack Smarter. So they can't actually go to CoreStack and access this lab. So if you guys want to access this lab, it is completely free right now. Go to hacksmarter.org and you will see it at the top of the page, Race Conditions Free Workshop. Now, that live event or that workshop event is available, it looks like, for the next 6 hours, but this lab is going to be a completely free one on the platform even when it's done. So this is probably the most common questions, like, hey, is this lab going to be available afterwards? Number one, if you enjoy this content, you should just become a member of Hack Smarter. But yes, this lab will be completely free even after this workshop. So if you go to hacksmarter.org and click hands-on labs, you can see all the labs we have there, and this will be one of those free labs. So whether if you don't have time to go through it while the event is live, as soon as that event is no longer live, it's going to be free forever on the Hack Smarter platform, and you'll be able to go through these race conditions and dive into the Linux privilege escalation. Now, Tinus has access to the back end of Hack Smarter, which is CoreStack. So if you're wondering, like, CoreStack, Hack Smarter, you guys access it via Hack Smarter, but when you look at Tinus's screen, you'll see that he's on the back end, which is CoreStack on the back end. Hopefully that clears that up. But that's all. All right, Tinus, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Absolutely amazing. Like, I'm even learning stuff, and I messaged it to Tinus yesterday, but I'm on a web app pen test right now. And very similar to what he was saying, I saw an arbitrary limit on this web app, did abuse a race condition, and bypass the limit. So, like, what Tinus is talking about, this isn't just like CTF techniques. These are things that you will see in real web app pen testing, bug bounty, and things of that nature. But all right, Tinus, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Let me grab your screen, and then
Thanks,
just so
Tyler.
people can see it easier, I will make myself disappear again.
Cool. Okay, so on the Hack Smarter website, not CoreStack, but basically you're going to start the
Oh,
machine.
hey, I'm back again. I don't mean to
Yes,
interrupt, but can you zoom in a little bit?
of
It's
course.
like we can see it okay, but a lot of people watch this on their mobile, so the
How's
bigger we can
that?
make the
Is
text,
that
the
better
better.
for us?
Yeah, that's better.
Cool. Okay.
Beautiful.
So on your core stack system, you would basically sort of like power on the machine, connect with the VPN profile. The only thing that's important to note is that I am using virtual hosting. So make sure that you take whatever your IP is there, replace it, and add these ones to your Etsy host file. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on my Kali machine, which I haven't booted in ages. So let me just show you what this looks like. So here you can see I'm running my VPN profile. Let's see if I can make this bigger as well. There we go. So I'm running the lovely profile called vpn.ovpn. That's connecting me to my specific instance. And then what you'll see is in my Etsy hosts, I've just basically added that IP and all my wonderful different virtual hosting names there as well. And then I have just saved the credentials for myself so that I have the ability to work with them. So note, if you go into this thing, it shows you what this environment looks like, a lovely little ChatGPT generated diagram. And then you have credentials here at the bottom. I give you the first 10 accounts, and then there's later going to be some questions where you have to hack some of these accounts there as well. Go for it, Tyler.
One thing. I just updated this in the lab or in the workshop itself. But for those of you watching, this is one of the most common questions I get is how do you get on the VPN? So Tinus, can you just show them clicking the systems tab? Yeah, you already clicked it. So if it's default by chapters, just click systems on the left side, download VPN config, and that's how you grab the VPN for this so that you can actually access the IP after you launch it. All right, I'll disappear again.
Cool. Like the information with Tyler, it helps a lot. Okay, so once I have done that, what I'm going to do is I have my burp open, and then I have just basically loaded my various different sites. So here we go. This is my MWR Bank website. This is my MWR mobile wallet site. And then this is my MWR Swag website. Okay, cool. And then basically we can use the credentials that we got there to authenticate to it. So we can basically take this first user. So let's do Mr. Ben Taylor. Ben Taylor, and we will do password. He's like, need to type password, exclamation, Ben Taylor.
All right. You're back, Tinus. Once again, it only disconnected for like 1 second, so no one missed anything. I'll pull you. Let me get all your stuff back up here. And
I need to make it clear I'm running like a persistent ping, and I literally had one packet drop. So like one packet drop out of 5,000 packets sent. So like why Restream just decides that one packet is enough, I don't know. But
crazy.
Here we are. Okay, so as I was saying, I was logging in as Ben Taylor just to sort of like see the website. I'm not going to give like a full breakdown of how to use Burp, how to do those different things. I think there's more than enough labs to help you there. But it's worth noting in my settings for the proxy, I've just basically enabled my proxy to send my data through to my Burp instance. And now I have my web application here. Okay, logging into the web application, I can see that I have access to accounts. I like to just sort of like enumerate some stuff first. So let's take this account number. We can see that this one has about $282. This one has a little bit more. We can create a new transaction by saying, let's transfer from that one to our other one. I do love my UI design. This is AI to the max because everyone needs a slider when they're doing transactions, right? This is the way that you have to specify the amount of money that you want to send. And we do the transaction to one of our other accounts. And if we go back, we can see that basically there has been a transfer that is made. Now, with that being said, let's quickly look if we can see the transaction that's being made. And it looks like if I go to my Burp history, can I make Burp larger, Tyler? Have you ever tried that?
There we go. Sorry, it had me muted. Yeah, actually, Tinus, if you want to take my upcoming web app course, I show you how to do that. But if you go to Burp and then settings, settings, not user settings, settings at the top. No, Burp again.
Am I completely blind?
Burp, and then settings. There you go. And then go to user interface.
Yes.
And then message editor will be, if you see the font message display there, click change font, and that will change the font for the actual like replay and request windows. And then hit OK on that, and then click display underneath message editor.
Message editor, then display.
So on the left panel, like underneath user, hit display, and then you can increase the font size of the overall like Burp UI. I know this because I live stream all the time, and Burp is so freaking tiny, and you can't just like Control Shift plus. But there, now it's much better.
This is an awesome hack to know whenever I'm doing techie demos and everything like that as well. So thanks for the tip. I'll have to subscribe to Tyler's course to learn more tricks like this. Okay, so let's quickly see if we can find that lovely request that happens. These are the get ones. I don't care about that. Post, this looks like the right one. So I have a post happening to the transaction. We can see that I have a account from, an account to, and a amount that I have there. I'm going to send it to repeater. Going at repeater, I'm basically going to add it to a group, and I am going to call this the transaction race condition. Cheating a little bit because I know that there's a race condition here. Okay, so now I have this one tab here. Let's increase this amount. If we go back to our website, we can see that I have about 5,000 there. So let's try to keep things simple, right? You can just spam like multiple different requests and everything. What I'm going to do here is I'm just basically going to duplicate it once. I'm going to keep it simple by knowing that, like, look, I don't have $6,000 in this account. I only have 5,800. So if I make two different requests, right, for $3,000 to be transmitted from that one, and maybe before we do that, let's actually just show the race condition or the non-race condition in working. Let's actually try to transfer 6,000, right? We need to find the signal that arbitrary limit. So if I send this request, it says insufficient balance for payment. So now we know that we got the signal that there is a arbitrary limit being placed. We can't go into the negative. So now let's try to go into the negative, 3,000 and 3,000 for two different requests. And what we'll do is we'll do a little last byte sync attack there with it. And let's fire it off and see what happens. Okay, this one says transaction has been performed. And wouldn't you know it, this one also says transaction has been performed. And now if we go and we just do a lovely little refresh, wouldn't you know it, our account is now negative. And we have essentially found a race condition there. If we open that one and we just go to our history, we can get our flag. So if I get the account number, which request is it again? It's this one, get account. There we go. We have our flag there. It is flags for the it is flags based on the song of First I Was Afraid, but good luck if you're going to try and guess what my four flags are to get SSH access. I highly recommend that you just get the flags. It's going to be easier that way. But this is like it's such a silly thing, right? We're literally just doing a last byte sync, sending two requests, we're transferring money, and now we have a negative balance. And I start with this one because I feel like this is a little bit of a silly example. We're not really cheating the bank, right? The bank is keeping a ledger that we have gone into the negative, right? So at some point they are going to go like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That was very, very bad, right? And they will have the ability to like claw back their money. But as you will see with some of the later race conditions, when it actually starts to happen over multiple different applications and also multiple different organizations, right? Who is going to take accountability in those cases? And that's where race conditions can get quite risky, and you can end up with race conditions that carry quite a high vulnerability risk for you there as well. But that's your banking website. Then you have your mobile wallet one. And then my absolute favorite, look at this AI design for a swag website. It's perfect. I couldn't ask for a better design there. I did the back end myself, but front end development, I have done that from first principles. I don't want to do it from first principles again. So I'm a big advocate for stuff like Bolt to help you with front ends, especially when it's a low risk, low reward thing such as a race condition workshop. And I think, Tyler, that's a very, very quick run through of like race conditions. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience or yeah, things that they want to have some answers for.
I love it. Well, dude, on behalf of everyone watching, like seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out to teach us. So if you guys do have questions about race conditions or anything of that nature, feel free to ask in chat. We have, I think, across the 3 different platforms, I don't even know how many, over 100 people right now, which is amazing. And also, guys, I am doing a giveaway. So Hack Smarter is the platform I started. We have hands-on labs and courses that you can actually afford. But if you just want to try it out, I am giving away 3 1-month all access subscriptions, which unlocks all courses, all Hack With Me's, and all labs. And I'm giving away 2 1-month hands-on lab subscriptions, which just unlocks all of the labs. Now, you have to be in this live stream right now to be eligible for that because you have to fill out this Google form that I just made. Now, to be very clear, I am not collecting your information. If I was good at marketing, I'd probably collect your information, edit to a newsletter, and spam you, but I'm not good at marketing. So I'm not collecting your information. It's just so I can reach out to you if you win. Now, there are a few requirements. You have to be a member of the Hack Smarter Discord. That's the only requirement, and attending this live event right now. So if you're not a member of the Hack Smarter Discord, if you go to hacksmarter.org, you can just click Discord at the top. Otherwise, I will drop a Discord link in chat as well. So I'm going to be closing that form, y'all, in like 8 to 10 minutes, and then it will be closed. So you have to be a member of the Hack Smarter Discord, and then it just asks for your email. But be very clear, not using it. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to add you to a newsletter. It's just so I can reach out to you. If you try to enter more than once, if you try to abuse a race condition in Google Forms, you just won't be eligible. That's where I do the Discord verification. If you really make multiple Discord names and multiple emails just to try to win, then
Race
kudos to
condition.
you. Yes, you can abuse the Tyler Ramsby race condition there. And if you really want it that bad, I'll just give you a voucher anyways. But let's see. So Professor Roger White said, "Can you show how you adjusted the time?" I'm not actually sure if I understand your question, Roger. I would say, Roger, if you just joined, so Roger, I'm guessing Roger maybe just joined to see the demo. He didn't hear the whole teaching on what a race condition is. So, Roger, you'll want to watch this from the beginning. And what I'm actually going to do, everybody, is once we are all wrapped up, I will take the full recording of the workshop. It'll be on my YouTube channel, but I'm also going to embed it onto the lab page. So, on the lab page itself, you will see the full recording of this embedded on the lab page. So, you'll be able to watch this as many times as you want as you dig into what a race condition is and then work through the hands-on labs. And also, for those of you new to Hack Smarter, we encourage all live streaming. Like, nothing is ever off limit. So if you want to make a walkthrough of yourself going through this, live streaming yourself going through this, that is not only allowed, it is encouraged. So feel free to share your learning with the world.
Also,
He said
please QA my challenge. So, like, if something breaks, let Tyler know, and he will let me know, and I'll make an update. We did do it in like an internal workshop, and everything did work. But Murphy's law. So, if something breaks, please let us know.
I mean, it worked during the live stream. That's what things usually break. Like, I'll test all of it offline, and then as soon as I'm live, nothing works. But it worked, which is amazing. Super cool. So Professor Roger White said, "No for the race window. No, I've been here from the beginning." I don't know if I understand your question, Tinus. I don't know if you understand his question. He said, "Can you show how you adjusted the time for the race window?"
So I
Yeah.
didn't adjust the time. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question correctly, but I didn't adjust the time at all. Basically, okay. So for this one, I didn't adjust the time at all. This is just purely there's a race condition because I am not actually locking this specific record that is available or that I'm busy reviewing. So all I did with Python, so this is Python code, is I ran a timer at the point that the race condition starts or the race window starts. And literally, I stopped the timer and printed out the time when the race window ends. And basically, that was 60 milliseconds. So that was just me not extending the time or anything. If I wanted to extend it, I would do something like a time.sleep in Python. And you actually see in the local race condition, I did it. I see you mention in burp. I didn't do any time adjustments in burp.
Oh, he's wondering how you did the send group and parallel, right? When other people use repeater, they just hit
Oh,
repeater. He was
okay.
wondering how you grouped all those tabs together. If you want to just go over that part a little bit slower.
Sure. Let me quickly show you that. So I was finding the request that I have. I sent it to repeater. And then under repeater, when you have that tab for this new request that you're going to send, right click on that and say add to group. You can then either add it to an existing group or you can create a new tab group. And that's what I was doing there. So like RC taste, and we can give it a color. Now it's there. And once you have a request in your group, a super interesting or cool thing that you can do is you can just say duplicate the tab. So let's duplicate this like 10 times. And you'll see that in this one group, it has now created 10 requests for you. So now I have 11 requests here. And then when I click on send, the little drop down next to it, rather than just sending request number 3, I can click the drop down and I can say, hey, everything that's in this tab that's grouped together, I want to send it in a different way. And I'm currently sending it in parallel with Last Byte Sync. James Kettle speaks about sending it in sequences and using that to identify race windows as well. But that's there's a lot involved there. So you can just click that one to send in parallel. And once you hit the button, you'll see that it is going to send all of them in parallel at that point. It's basically burp in repeater is performing the Last Byte Sync attack for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm guessing that answers this question. Let us know, Roger White, if that answers. And we also have a question from Joshua. Let me grab his question. I think I can pull it up on the screen. So he's wondering if race conditions can lead to auth bypasses or privilege escalation rather than just e-commerce. How would you answer that?
So privilege escalation is very common to see with like time of check to time of use, and specifically local privilege escalation. So I'll give you the simplest example. There was a talk done by another South African called Leon Jacobs, or Jacobs. A phenomenal talk on how we found various different local privilege escalation vectors in drivers. So like graphics drivers or like motherboard drivers or like what he called bloatware, because it was like the motherboard installs like additional stuff for you there. But a very popular type of race condition where you can do privilege escalation is a time of check to time of use. So for example, you have to have a driver install, right, for your graphics card. That's a pretty privileged process, right? And sometimes you need to have a non-administrative user be able to install that driver. So what would happen is the driver installation, the get update feature, happens as a very privileged user, but a lower privileged user has the ability to ask it, hey, look for an update. And what would happen is basically it would then download the update as a file. Sometimes it writes that file to a location that other users have the ability to control as well, right? And then you have the ability to replace the update with a malicious update. And if you replace it with a malicious update, right, that allows for privilege escalation, because like driver installation is literally remote code execution as a feature at that point. And why they call it a time of check to time of use is what they would do with those drivers is they would actually check like a signature of the file or the integrity of the file or the hash of the file, that what they downloaded was the exact same thing. And when they checked the file for its integrity versus when they actually used the file to do the update, that's a race window. And in that race window, right, you have the ability to replace the file with something malicious, and that's basically going to it's going to give you privilege escalation. For authorization bypasses, a very interesting thing that you can take a look at is if you have a race condition, you have potentially the ability to exploit things like bypassing multi-factor authentication, right? If there is small windows in the sense of you sending your logon credentials to it, then updating the thing to say that, yes, you're authenticated, but we're waiting for MFA, there's the potential for you to do things like an MFA bypass. There's wild stuff that James Kittle shows in race conditions and everything, and like it boggles my mind how he finds those different things. I think like it's insane. But honestly, I think when it comes to race conditions, the sky's the limit, depending on your creativity of like looking for places where people are not intending for there to be a race condition.
Beautiful. Got another good question from AD Penguin saying, can you tell us how to fix race conditions in your experience? Like, what's the defense against them? What's the remediation?
So the best defense that makes business fire you is lock the entire table when one transaction comes in, which basically means that you're making it a parallel system. The simpler way is that there's different things. I saw someone, Joffrey, I think, mentioned things like semaphores there as well, where like you're physically forcing single processing on certain things, right? And I think that's what you're trying to do. We basically say that you need to make certain requests that are accessing shared data atomic. Now, that's going to depend on what you have in your backend. The simplest one that I know of, and what's a really cool one for you to play around with. So once you privilege escalate on this workshop, go take a look at the MySQL that I've configured for this, right? And if we go, or you don't have to show Tyler, but that request of where we had the SQL statement for select from, okay, let me just show it there for everyone. This statement here, what you could do with this statement is you could literally add the SQL command behind the equals equals %s, you could say for update. And what basically then does is any record that gets returned in the SQL's select statement here, it would basically lock that row, right, saying that this cursor is going to run a update command on these values. And until I don't see the unlock command or SQL statement, no one else will be able to read these values. So let's say someone else or another request tries to read these values. Basically, what MySQL will do is it would put that request in a holding pattern until the lock basically releases, and then it will have that request execute. So for update is a way you get locking tables that you can introduce, but ultimately it depends on the backend architecture, and it's a case of basically making sure that you make the web transaction atomic.
Love it. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, we are technically over our hour, and the workshop, we must conclude it. But I'll say this, y'all. The lab environment, you'll really enjoy it. There's a bunch of labs to get hands-on with it. And once again, they are free right now, and they will continue to be free even after that live workshop labs are done. So make sure you go through the labs. If you want help or hints, drop over to the Hack Smarter Discord, and I'll create a dedicated channel for this now that it has officially released. And Tinus, thank you again so much for rushing home on the train, jumping on the live stream, and teaching all of us how to hack all the things. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Lovely being here. Cheers, everyone.
And for the rest of you, thank you for being here, guys. I will get the recording up on the lab page as soon as it's done downloading, processing, all of that fun stuff. So you'll see that added to the lab page, hopefully within the next hour or 2 hours, depending on how long it takes. But hopefully you guys all have an amazing rest of your Tuesday. I think that's the day it is. And we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Cheers.